My wife will always come for
It's clear is dead.
You may have heard tales of damsels in distress,
I'm killing myself once we reach the honeymoon suite.
Wouldn't that be nice?
but you've never seen anything like the Princess Bride.
Inconceivable!
She gets kidnapped, he gets killed,
I've seen worse.
but it all ends up okay.
Have fun storming the castle!
The Princess Bride, a new comedy by Rob Reiner.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And now for the SuperCaZt.
Welcome back to the SuperCaZt, everyone. I am the man who put the super in SuperCaZt, the Super Foch, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host,
Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt.
and we hope you guys are having a fantastic evening, morning, whenever you're listening to this. We welcome you to the SuperCaZt, and today's film that we're going to go over is a true classic, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's a true classic. I started out, I guess, as more of a cult classic, but
Right.
it's one of those deals where it's passed a few generations now, and it just keeps growing in popularity pretty much every year. It's just like a lot of the movies on our show where came out in the theater, did a little bit but not much, but then it got on video and television, and people just started eating it up. And it's definitely one that I think the first time you watch it, it's good.
Yeah.
But it's not great. But the more you watch it, the better it gets. I think that's the big thing about Princess Bride is it's just you always find new things about it. You have new appreciation for certain aspects of it. And that's really cool because it's really hard to make a movie like that.
Yeah, it really is. This is definitely one of those films that you think about and you just, there's just a lot of memorable scenes. Like, even if you haven't seen the movie all the way through, I guarantee you can think of at least one thing you've seen from this film because it's just so quotable. Has a wonderful cast, which we'll try to mention as many, if not all of them, as possible to go over because there's a lot of really, really good performances. And just really excited to talk about this movie. This is, of course, if I haven't already said so, my wife's favorite film, so I want to do this episode justice for her because she loves this film. So, welcome guys to the SuperCaZt, and we're going to go over, if you haven't already figured it out, the classic Princess Bride.
Got very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable! You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Princess Bride, it's got the rare elements of things just coming together at the same time. And I guess I'll talk my experience first. So
Yeah, go ahead, man.
yeah, I never really grew up with this movie. I just remember catching it on TV a few times, and I liked it. And I watched it a few other times, but it's really, I guess, for this show, for this viewing, that I finally man, this is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it took, but I guess it was maybe seeing it in the 4K remaster. But there were certain parts that, I choked up. I was just like, this is beautiful. And it just brought me to tears. And that's great when a movie can do that.
Yeah, especially unexpectedly, right?
Yeah, and that actually gets to one of my critiques, but I'm going to save that for later.
Right.
But it's a really great movie. Magical is a good word for it, I think.
I like that word, yeah. For me, a similar experience. I remember watching this on TV every now and again. I don't think I ever sat down and watched it start to finish, what I would say, but I do remember seeing it. After seeing Robin Hood Men in Tights, I would recognize, of course, Cary Elwes, who plays Wesley in this, and I'd be like, oh, that's his other film. Okay, cool. But it wasn't until I started dating my wife that I really paid attention to this movie in better detail. She sat me down and watched it, and I thought it was really good. I really liked a lot of the characters, a lot of good performances in this. But as you said, we've watched it a couple other times since, and it just seems to get better and better. And I like some of the characters better the second and third time I watched it. Like, one of them who's actually probably become one of my favorites is Fazzini, which we'll get into his character in a bit, but he just seems to get better and better. And Wallace Shawn is just hilarious in that role.
It's inconceivable that he's that good.
Exactly. But yeah, so I definitely agree with you. I think this is a film that definitely stands the test of time. I think it's a little dated at times, but I think it still is a good film for the modern time even. I think a lot of people can still get a lot out of it. And as you said, there's some emotional moments in there. One of the biggest I think we'll probably get into actually was from real life, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, so this could be a lot of fun to talk about it.
Definitely.
Let's get into it. So, in case you didn't know, Princess Bride was originally a book written by the great writer and screenwriter William Goldman.
Yep.
And do you know the story by where it comes from?
I've probably heard before, but go ahead and remind me.
Yeah, so apparently he had written a lot of stuff, and this guy, he crosses all genres. I mean, we just talked about our last show, or a few shows ago, Last Action Hero. He was one of the writers on that. But this one, he wanted to do something for his daughters, because he'd always tell them random stories before they went to bed. And he's like, girls, what kind of story would you like me to write? A novel. And one of them said, how about a princess? The other one's like, how about a bride? And that's where it began. He said he just got into it. He was writing it every day, and he got into the characters, he got into the world. And then one day, he killed Wesley. And he just felt terrible. He's like, how could I do this? How could I kill this guy? And he just had to keep writing just to kind of save him, because it crushed him so much. This book meant a lot to him. And eventually, that book found its way into Rob Reiner's hand from his dad, Carl, who had known William Goldman. And Rob Reiner read it, and he's like, somebody's got to make this into a movie. And he just kept it in his back pocket. Meanwhile, several people attempted to make it into a movie, but they never could get the tone right, and they never get the humor right. And that's when Goldman finally just got frustrated. He's like, forget it. I'm taking the rights back. Nobody's making this into a movie.
I will never love again.
And that's where it sat for a while. It was just kind of like this weird thing until randomly Rob Reiner, after he made one of my favorite comedies. This is Spinal Tap, of all things. He made that, and he said, okay, what am I going to do for my next movie? And after he did one other, he went and found Goldman. He's like, hey, can I make your book into a movie? And he kind of sold him on it. So it's pretty cool that this was a passion project for him. Right. And you can really see that in the direction and just the writing and the care that goes into all of this.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a really sort of a sweet story, but there is humor there. Obviously, some really funny characters, really interesting scenes, and like I said at the top, bunch of memorable lines. And we'll probably go over most of them, if not all of them. That's a very interesting story, and you gotta really give credit to the author, because he could have just sold this to anybody. And it could have been made by anybody. And it happens a lot where people write a story, they sell it, and then it's made into a film, and it's nothing like the book. It's, it gets maybe uses the character names and the title, but then the movie goes off on its own thing. But as far as I can tell, the movie's pretty faithful to the book itself.
I guess so. I've never read it. I know the book it's pretty thick, because they said it adds a lot to it, talks more about the world. Apparently, it's written not from William Goldman's perspective. It's written from an author named somebody Guildenstern or something like that. It's just, it's very random, but I think the big thing that the movie gets is sort of the ironic tone at times, the humor, but how it still blends that with, this movie really's got it all. I mean, give this to anybody that has a pulse, and they're probably going to get something out of it, unless they're just a total cynic.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, like we said, it kind of covers all the emotions that you would want in a film, because you laugh a lot, you cry a little, there are some emotional things that tug at you, and it's one of those films, when you watch it, it really does affect you. And I think it affected me more than I even anticipated it the first time I watched it. It just kind of stews into you, and you just can't help but think about it and think about these characters. And like we said, some really good performances. And I want to get into the plot of the film and just kind of explain it. Now, this film is over 30 years old, so we're going to probably spoil most of, if not the entire film. If you haven't watched this classic film, pause this, go watch it, and then join us and tell us what you think But let's go ahead and kind of, in a timely manner, kind of explain the plot.
So, the start of it it's kind of throws you off.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frame story. You got this little boy. He's sitting at home. He's sick.
Mm-hmm.
He's played by Fred Savage of all people.
Yep.
Wonder Years fame, if you're not familiar with that show.
Yep.
And then his grandfather comes to cheer him up.
I love these two. This is one of my favorite parts of the film. I know you disagree with me a little bit, and that's okay. But I love the.
It's growing on me, but
Okay.
at the same time,
Yeah.
I don't know. They interrupt some of my favorite scenes, and it just makes me angry.
Well, I just love Columbo reading to Fred Savage. I just think that's hilarious. And he acts just like a kid. He's a sick kid and he doesn't want to hear mushy stuff. But the grandpa's sweet. He wants to read him this story, and I think his voice. That's one of the things that I think really makes this film is the quote-unquote narration by Peter Falk. I think he's just got this voice that's just, I don't know, it's very grandpa-ish. I know that's not a word, but I really like his narration, especially at the start of this.
Yeah, he sets the tone. He kind of brings you in. It's pretty cool, but I don't know. It's grown on me, like I said. Like, I like how the film goes. He gets drawn into it more. It starts off, he's just like, skip over that stuff. And then he's like, well, he gets killed by pirates. Like, oh, pirates are cool. Getting killed's cool. And then later, like, he gets into the sword fight and all that stuff. And then it's really the scene with the eels when she falls into the thing and the eels are about to get him. He's like, don't worry, she does not get eaten by the eels here.
Those are the shrieking eels. If you don't believe me, just wait. They always grow louder when they're about to feed on human flesh. If you swim back now, I promise no harm will come to you. I doubt you'll get such an offer from the eels.
Doesn't get eaten by the eels at this time.
What?
The eel doesn't get her. I'm explaining to you. Nervous.
I wasn't nervous.
It's just like to comfort him a little bit. It's like, you seemed a little scared. So I agree. It adds a little bit, but there are certain times though where because I'm a purist. When it comes to film, if there's something beautiful going on, I don't want to interrupt it. I mean, and you got this stupid kid interrupt in the middle of this awesome scene. It's set in a field. True love is there. They're kissing. And he's like, oh, no, not this mushy stuff. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you stupid kid.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of like, but
it just takes me out of it, and I know that's the point of it.
It is.
So I'm complaining about something that's adherent to the film. It adds to it, but at the same time, I think it just gets on my nerves. I don't know.
I think what that does, if I can defend it a little bit, I think.
Well, you don't have to defend it. I understand why it's there, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it shows that you shouldn't take this movie too seriously. I mean, it's like, there's a love story, but this is just more about adventure and everything. And think about it. I mean, when you're a kid, especially that young, you don't care about the romance part. You're just like, I want to see the dragons. I want to see the big giant, as of course is in this film.
I don't know, but true love is what brings me here. And speaking of that, we get introduced to the beginning of the plot of the actual book. You have Wesley and the Princess Buttercup, and they're on a farm, and they're just living the greatest life. She's playing hard to get because he's just a poor little farm boy.
Yep.
And I don't know, this is just the whole interaction, just how he's like, as you wish, and he just loves her, and he's gonna take all this abuse from her.
Yes, he is definitely smitten, and I think it's probably equal smitten between them. She's just, like you said, kind of playing the hard to get kind of thing, because that's just what women do,
Yeah, and plus it's a little bit of a class thing, I guess, even though she's not.
I think she's torn, honestly. I think she loves the guy, but she knows she's a higher class, so she doesn't really think that, you know, it'd probably work out. So that's why she kind of puts on this facade of, you're just a farm boy, you're nothing really. Even though deep down she's like, nah, he's good looking. Yeah.
It's just, I love his look. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Cary Elwes has to be his perfect film.
It's a really good look for him, and I think you're right. I think it's probably his best film, which he's made some other good films, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
But I really think that I can't imagine, especially at this time period, anybody else playing this role.
Yeah, and I'm glad they fought for him for this role, because I know they could have picked somebody with a bigger sort of name to attach to him, but Rob Reiner saw him in a show and he was like, he's pretty good. I like this guy, and he's great. Like I said, he's got the dashing look to him. He has the dialogue obviously down. I mean, just every time he says a line, you're just, this is amazing. It's just poetic, and even like his smarminess. I mean, you know, like he just like says that stuff, like when they're going through the swamp, and he's like, "Yeah, this is a great place. I wouldn't want to live here, but it's not too bad."
There's definitely some scenes where you see his attitude like he has in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Like you can definitely see some of quote unquote Robin Hood in some of his scenes, especially when he can't keep his head up, you know, and he's mostly dead, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What about Robin Wright as Buttercup? When I watched this film, I have to admit, the first time I watched this film, I was not completely sold on Robin Wright's performance. Like, it was good and everything, but I had to watch it a couple times to really appreciate what she was doing. How about you, man?
I'm the same way. I think her performance seems sort of one note at the first.
A little bit, yeah.
It's just like, I'm just going to keep saying the same stuff. Like,
right.
Wesley will come and get me. He will come and save me. And then it's really toward the end of the movie whenever she's like totally despondent and just feels like what's the point now? He's not coming. And then when he shows up at the end at the castle, and it just, I don't know, I think she's got a good performance. It's just a little more subtle than what you would expect. I mean, it seemed, and part of it is she is playing over the top. She's definitely going for it, and like most of the cast in this film. But I don't know. I think she's really good, and she definitely looks great. I mean, that's part of the deal. Is Cary Elwes he said he was smitten with her whenever they were doing it. He's like, you're so distracting. It's like acting with Grace Kelly, is what he said.
Which I think a lot of it goes with the writing in the film, because like at the beginning she's still kind of this uppity, kind of like what I said, playing hard to get towards Wesley and everything. So I think she kind of keeps this attitude for the first part of the film all the way to the end, sort of, and then kind of warms up a little bit. And so I think it's more or less the writing and not the character more than just the performance. Because I agree with you. I think Robin puts in a great performance and really pretty, and just you buy her as royalty. Like, she just has this air of, yeah, she's a princess. You don't question that. It's not out of the realm of possibility that she would be who she is. So I give credit to that to her for that.
Yeah, and I think it's for both of these leads, really. I think both of them could fit in any sort of film where they're just recast, different decade, different era. I mean, I can see Elwes being like, your Burt Lancaster, swashbuckler, and same thing with her. She's just like a princess. So great casting on those two, and they really make the film for me. Like I said, the true love is what brings me into this film, and while I'm still talking about it, I love everything else, but it's just their relationship. I just think it's perfect, and their chemistry's great. I mean, it's hard for the little screen time they actually share together. It's kind of hard to believe that that's what holds the whole film together, is their love.
That's a great point, because if their love does not work for this film doesn't work. I mean, we have all these other side characters that are just amazing, and we're about to get into all of them here in just a second. But if Cary and Robin do not work as love interests towards each other, I don't think this film can last. I don't think, you have to buy their love. You have to buy that, they're really into each other. And I think they pull it off masterfully. And I think that they have, as you said, really good chemistry, and just, they're amazing. An amazing performance for both of them. And like you said, it's crazy because they do not share a whole lot of screen time. And so there's even more pressure that when they're on screen, they have to really sell it. And I think they do a good job.
Yeah. Moving along with the plot. So
right.
Wesley moves off and he's presumed to be dead. Meanwhile, Buttercup is betrothed to the Prince Humperdinck of all people, played by Chris Sarandon, and she doesn't seem too keen on this wedding, but before they can even do it, she gets captured by these 3 kidnappers, played by Wallace Shawn Fazzini, Mandy Patinkin as Inigo Montoya, I cannot speak, and of course, Andre the Giant as Fezzik. I don't know why I couldn't remember his name. Fezzik.
So if you don't know who Andre the Giant is, he was a wrestler back in the late 70s, early 80s. And this true story, when my wife first saw this film when she was a kid, she was told that there was a real giant in the movie. And by her dad. Well, she thought her dad was just pulling her leg. And so she asks her mom, and was like, no, he's a real giant. He's a wrestler. And this, of course, back before the internet. This is in the 80s and that kind of thing. And she told me that the writer actually had Andre in mind when he was writing this story, because he had seen him on TV or something like that. I was like, oh, he'd be perfect, you know. And of course, this was pretty late in Andre's wrestling career, and he is in horrible health. They have to do all these things just to kind of keep him comfortable.
Yeah.
The scene where he has to catch Buttercup, basically he was in a brace, and they kind of had to just like lower her down very gently, just because he was in so much pain. But you don't get any of that in his performance, and you really, of course, buy, because he's a huge guy. He is a giant.
That Vicini, he can fuss.
Fuss. Think you like to scream at us?
Probably he means no harm.
He's really very short on charm.
You have a great gift for rhyme.
Yes. Some of the time.
Enough of that!
Fezzik, are there rocks ahead?
If they are, we all be dead.
No more rhymes now, I mean it!
Anybody want a peanut?
Yeah!
I love that he's in this film.
I love all 3 of these guys.
Yes.
Andre as Fezzik, I just like his line delivery. I know he's not an actor trained, and apparently he had a hard time with this because
really
on the Criterion edition they have a good story on there where he was basically playing the character too like tight, like he was just like not being himself. And then it really took him like a day or two before he was like, oh, I get this. You guys are just playing around. You guys are acting. Okay, I get this. And it finally clicked for him. He just does great. When he's doing the constant rhyme and all that, and he's like, just when he talks, it just makes you smile.
Right.
It's just like, because he's so big, but he's like so goofy, you know? He's just the big goof guy. And like you said, he went through some trouble why this is happening. He had back surgery right before this. So he's not feeling good. And he also, I don't know if you've heard about this, he was a insanely crazy drinker. And he would just get drunk constantly, like pretty much every scene he's drunk.
Because of the pain. He has to numb his pain. And I've heard, now the best story I've heard from Andre, and my wife told me to tell this story, is they were shooting a scene, I can't remember which scene it was. They said action, and all of a sudden Andre farts. And it's like this loud boom of fart, and it lasts for like 20 seconds, and everybody just like freezes because they don't know what to do, and then everybody just busts out laughing, and they have to like just take time to get over that because it was just such an out of nowhere situation. They just didn't know how to react.
There's a lot of crazy stuff on this show. I mean, I think he was just hungover when they were doing that scene on the white horses or whatever. So he was not feeling good because apparently he drank something called the American, where he mixed 40 different liquors into 40 ounces and just drink that as like a warm-up drink. And so this dude,
Yeah.
he's epic. He's awesome. And
Yep.
he's great. And I love the whole scene where we don't know who it is at this point. The Pirate Roberts is chasing down these kidnappers, trying to, we don't even know why, but we assume it's to rescue Buddy Cop. And it's Wesley.
Yep.
He's chasing them down. And I love this whole part where he's chasing them down, and then going up the mountain. At the top, he's got Inigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin, and I just love their whole sword fight and how that leads into the fight with Andre. It's just very epic. And it's still so whimsical that you're just smiling the whole time. You never feel like, oh, nobody's life's in danger. Even the sword fight, you're like, neither one of these guys is gonna die, which is great because I love them both.
So, and we may have to put this in the description of our video on YouTube, but I found a YouTube video of the sword fight, but it's Mandy and Carrie using lightsabers. And so their whole fight is using light. It is the coolest thing. Like, it's so cool how they did that. I mean, it's perfect. Like, they do the whole sword fight. I think Mandy has a green one and Wesley has the blue one, I think. I just stumbled on it the other day and I was like, that is awesome.
That's silly.
So, I really love Mandy Patinkin in this role. Of course, the famous story with him, and it's the one that kind of chokes me up when I think about it, is his father had just passed from cancer. And in the movie, of course, the six-fingered man kills Inigo Montoya's father. So he has been practicing forever. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And when they got to the scene where he's going to actually sword fight the six-fingered man, Mandy Patinkin said he used father's passing as inspiration in saying he was fighting cancer. And so when you hear that story and you watch that scene, it makes it so much more because Mandy had actually lost his dad. And so I think that adds a lot of emotion to this scene, especially because it's just so powerful. And I love Mandy Patinkin's performance. I think he is hilarious and yet very heartfelt, especially on that scene.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
It is.
Yeah, that scene it's crazy. I mean, because it
Right.
hits you normally just because of what's going on. I mean, he's on his wit's end. He's just been stabbed. He should just sit there and die, but this is what gets him up, is his revenge. This is his chance. He pulls it off. And he even breaks character whenever he says, when he stabs Christopher Guest's character, he's just like, yeah, I was just too mad at cancer that day, I guess. But he's very charming. I mean, just like Carrie Elwes. I mean, they have their little sword fight. It's like, who are you? Because they're like, sit there, and he's trained his whole life, and he's just amazed to come across a guy that's as good as him. And both of them are just like smitten with each other, just like, man, you're so good. Well, you're so good. And they're just like fighting left-handed at first, then fighting right-handed. It's a great scene. I know they rehearsed it for months, which they don't do that anymore. That's what kills me about movies nowadays. There's no way they would rehearse a fight scene for months.
No, not like that. But yeah, I think Mandy and Carrie have a really good chemistry. I think he's just one of the big bright spots of this film. But let's talk about...
I love it when Fezzik comes and gets him out of his drunken stupor.
I love it, yes. Let's talk about Wallace Shawn's character. This may be one of my favorite characters in the entire film, especially the scene where he tries to poison Wesley. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire film.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so good. Like...
Yeah, just going through his logic is just like, well, I know I can't choose the one in glass in front of you because of... And he just goes through it all and just goes on for like 5 minutes. It's like, oh, but you don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. He thinks he's gonna outsmart
I'm Sicilian.
You guessed wrong.
You only think I guessed wrong. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. Ha ha, you fool. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
It's just great. He's great because, and I heard that he was kind of paranoid because he heard that Danny DeVito was supposed to be his part.
Really?
So,
I never
so
heard
he was
that.
like, Yeah, he thought he wasn't good enough. He's like, how can I be as good as Danny DeVito? But apparently he just brought it every day and just like put it all out there, and you can definitely see it. I mean, he's over the top, but every line he says is just, it's really funny.
Look, I love Danny DeVito, but I don't think I would want to see anybody else but Wallace Shawn as Vizzini. I think he's just too good. I think he's hilarious.
But I love it when he actually like drinks the poison. That reaction, and he just
laughs and he kills over.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Like I said, it's just perfect line delivery, perfect timing, and yeah, that's just one of the best scenes in the whole film for me.
Yeah. If we're having a sort of love story, a fairy tale, if you will, we got to have some villains. And there's these two villains. We've already mentioned Chris Sarandon before as Humperdinck, but we also have Christopher Guest and as the Six-Fingered Man. And I like both of these guys. I didn't like Christopher Guest the first time I watched it, but I love him in everything else he's in. Like, he is a genius. If you ever watch any of his movies, like we already mentioned, This is Spinal Tap, but all of his mockumentaries, Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, all those, he's just hilarious. And this one, he seems like he's kind of scaling it back a lot. He's just speaking very slowly, very proper. Not much emotion, but that's what the part calls for. So it's a different sort of part. So the first time I watched it, I didn't think it was that good, but the more I watch it, I'm like, yeah, he's pretty good, especially in the scene where he's doing the torture on Wesley. That's probably his best scene.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, his performance is very subtle. I think that's what you would say. It's very subtle. Yeah. But there's also some just real, I mean, like, he owns the scene when he's in it. Like, he doesn't even have to say a whole lot, and yet he's still the focus of the scene. And I think that is a credit to him. Completely, because he's definitely talented. And like you, I think his performance just got better and better for me as I've watched it over the years. Particularly that scene where he's torturing Wesley. I think that's probably the best scene of his. I really like that scene a lot.
I agree. And Chris Sarandon, I know him best as Jack Skellington, and he's also in Fright Night. But this is when he is just low-key actually hilarious. He's just over the top. Like, all of his line delivery, it makes no sense. It's like he almost can read the script or something. Like when he can smell the odorless poison. It's like, wait, how can he do that? How is he that good at tracking? He can smell it. Nobody else can. And like, just, I don't know. He's just hilarious. And even though he's a terrible person, obviously, the character's terrible. He's just, I don't even understand why he wants to kill Buttercup so much. I guess he just wants to start a war and he thinks that'll be cool. Yeah. It's just kind of like, did you really have to come up with this terrible plot to do this? But I guess you'd have no movie if you didn't do it.
No, I agree. I think I like Christopher Guest a little bit better. I think he's just a better character.
Definitely more villainous. Right. Like, he's in the scene, you kind of feel scared. Chris Sarandon's in the film, you're just kind of like, this guy's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's kind of like the way you kind of feel about Wallace Shawn's character, because, like, you know he's a bad person, but I don't know. I'm not as scared of either one of those guys as I am the Six-Fingered Man. So.
Yeah, and think about it. Wesley beats him lying on his back.
Right. Exactly.
He's just like, can't even move. He's just like, he just beats him.
And of course, we cannot not talk about this film without talking about Billy Crystal and Carol Hank. Because they are great. I love these two people. In fact, me and my wife quote their lines all the time because they're just, I mean, it's Billy Crystal. If you don't know who Billy Crystal is, you have not, you've been living under a rock, my friend, because he's just hilarious. And they wear makeup, so he's unrecognizable. Like, if I showed you a picture of the character, you would not be able to tell that that's Billy Crystal. So kudos on the makeup for both of them. But they're hilarious too.
Miracle Max and his wife, they're great. And it's funny you said that about Billy Crystal. I was watching this Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel review, and they were like, we had to look it up. I was like, I didn't know that was Billy Crystal. And I think they're great. And I remember seeing that's the only scene that gets improvised in the whole thing. Like, the whole thing was just them going off, making the whole thing is like, like.
And it's perfect. I mean, calls him witch. I'm not a witch. I'm your wife, and I don't think I want to be that anymore.
It's perfect, and I wish we had more of them in the film. It's like pretty much this whole movie. I wish there was an extended cut where there was just more hanging out with these characters because they're all fun.
Exactly.
I mean, even like we said, the bad guys, even that weird albino guy, like he just comes on the screen. I'm just like, yeah, that guy's pretty cool. I want to hang out with him. Yep. They're all. I mean, it's just. I guess that's the whole thing about this film. It's got a total vibe to it.
Bye-bye, boys. Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It would take a miracle.
Bye-bye.
Luckily, he's Miracle Max. He brought the man back from the dead. So pretty cool.
Yep. So as we said, folks, I mean, this is obviously Carrie Ellis and Robin Wright's, their film that they kind of hold together. But all of these performances, I think, make up what this whole film is about, and really there's a charm to this film. There's obviously comedy. There's a lot more comedy than you really think about until you watch the film. You're like, wow, this film is actually really funny. I mean, it's not gut busting, and you're not just throwing your head back the entire time, but there's enough comedy in there that it really does work, and really good performances, really good timing, chemistry, as we said. Anything that you want to critique about this film that just stands out to you?
Nothing that I haven't already. I told you the Fred Savage. I don't know. I wish he wouldn't interrupt. I wish there was a cut of the film where he doesn't. Like I said, I understand why he's in it. I understand this. The whole part of the film is like, it's really about the real people, the actual grandfather and the son getting closer together. But to me, I just like this. I like this fantasy world the best. I like going with these characters. I love that they get on their white horses at the end, all ride out together. I just see them going off and forming a whole like band or something after this. They seem like they just would keep hanging together after this. I really like just the whole vibe of this film, and I think one aspect that we haven't talked about yet is Mark Knopfler, the music.
Oh yeah, the music's fantastic. Oh yeah, we definitely need to hit that.
Yeah, it's great. Mark Knopfler, he's probably my second favorite guitarist of all time. Him with Dire Straits is awesome, but just as a solo player, and like a lot of people don't know this, that I'm a guitar player. So like one of the guys that I look to for my sound is Mark Knopfler. He's great. He's a finger picker like me, and he plays guitar in a few of these songs, but he just knows enough about music and what's needed for a scene that sometimes it's background, sometimes it's just punctuating the scene. Sometimes it seems kind of cheesy, but guess what? It's supposed to be cheesy.
Exactly.
So it's just perfect. I'm glad he got to do it. I think the only reason he did it is because he's a fan of This Is Spinal Tap, and he's just like, that movie's hilarious. I'm gonna do your music.
Yep. I agree with you, man. I actually do like the interactions with the grandpa and the kid. I think it is kind of funny, especially now that I'm older, because it kind of makes you think of when you were a kid and you heard stories from your grandpa or your dad or something like that. And so I think there is a charm to those scenes. I think what they could have done maybe is had more of a voiceover thing. Like maybe show them at the beginning and then maybe voiceover the rest of the way. That way there's no real cut in the actual action, so you can kind of see things, because there is a lot of really good scenes in this film that do not need to be interrupted and do not need to be changed. You mentioned the one where they're having that romantic moment. It goes right to the kid. It is a little abrupt. I will give you on that one. But again, I think that that's definitely on purpose to show that this is not really one of those kind of films.
Yeah,
so,
well, I think it just shows you how effective the film is if it can get that reaction.
Exactly. Good point, yes. So, I mean, like we said at the top, this film is definitely a classic. If you've not seen this film from start to finish, do yourself a favor and go watch it, because it is a classic. It's funny, got really good performances, and you'll want to watch it over and over, because again, you see different things, and I think the appreciation for me of this film gets more and more every viewing. So it's just a fantastic film, and
definitely
just really enjoy watching it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I watched it the other night, and then we didn't get to record last Saturday, so guess what? I watched it again. Yep. And I enjoyed both viewing experiences. It's a great film. Like I said, it's very whimsical. Like, you're just moving along, you're enjoying it. Nothing too heavy. but it still gets everything in a film that you really want. And I really like this quote from Carrie Elwes because they were talking about rebooting this, or remaking it, doing something, however, and that's my favorite thing about it is they've never done that. They've never done a sequel.
Nope.
The film is just perfect, and that's what he said. The world is full of very few perfect films. It's a shame to ruin one. So this is definitely one of the few perfect films. It's really great. No complaints really.
I can't see anybody remaking this and it being any better than what we have. I mean, I don't think that, and you know, people remake stuff all the time nowadays, but I just think this film is so timeless. I think it fits a certain time that's all time. And I think to remake it, I think that kind of ruins the mystique of it. Now, the question is, what about a sequel? I don't know. I don't think this film needs a sequel. I don't think there's any more you could say that's not already been said in the original. I really think this film is just one of those films you should not touch, but should be celebrated forever and ever.
Now I think you ought to go to sleep. Okay. 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 All right. Shalom.
Grandpa? Maybe you could come over and read it again to me tomorrow.
As you wish.
Totally agree. And we got another film like that next time on here. We're looking at an old film, 1939 classic, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, should be fun, man. Well, thank you guys for definitely joining us. We've had a really good time talking about this film. Like I said, Princess Bride is a classic, so go watch it if you haven't. And we hope to see you guys next time on the SuperCaZt. From my buddy Steve Z, I am the Super Foch, and we'll see you next time on the SuperCaZt.